Let's bring in Mark Leibovich. He's a CBS News political contributor and chief national correspondent for the New York Times Magazine. So, Mark, we now have a sitting president of the United States and a former FBI director accusing each other of being liars. What are you hearing from folks in D.C. about having to make that distinction, having to make that choice? You've got one individual who has served several U.S. presidents of both parties, and you've got the president of the United States. And when the question of integrity comes down, what are you hearing people are going to decide on?
Well, there are a few other facts here. I mean, it's more than just a he said here. I mean, Donald Trump, you can make a case that Jim Comey has a much stronger kind of credibility, cachet than Donald Trump does, because Donald Trump's been caught in many false statements over the last few months. But, the real crux of this, and I think that this will be the dominant part of the conversation today, is that, one, Jim Comey said what he said under oath, while President Trump has said what he said in a tweet. President Trump has also said that he's also suggested that there are tapes of this conversation. Jim Comey has said, also under oath, that he would love to hear the release of this. So I think the question you're going to hear over and over again, certainly in the next couple of days, is, for the White House, is, are there tapes or not? And if so, where are they? And if not, why did he suggest that there were?
Mark, as you saw, we showed that tweet that the president tweeted out this morning saying total and complete vindication here. But is it really vindication when you've got the president's press secretary, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, saying the president is not a liar? Is there ever a good moment when the press secretary has to refute charges that the president is a liar? Is that vindication?
It's not a good look. But vindication, I think, look, I think it's wishful thinking as far as, President Trump might think that he was vindicated by what went on yesterday. His supporters might think that. The fact of the matter is this investigation is going to continue. It's going to continue for a long time. And as John McCain has said over and over again, there are a lot of shoes left to fall here. So, whether he genuinely feels vindicated or not is unclear. I think the question is, what is next? And, vindication, I think, for a lot of people would be, okay, this is settled. We're just going to stop and move on to other things. I don't think anyone here thinks that's going to happen.
So it seems like the White House's main line of attack against Jim Comey is going to be about him giving that memo to his friend to then release that to the press. What's your reaction to that admission from Comey, essentially? And what I've also seen lawmakers doing from the GOP is saying, look, the president's a noob. He's new at this job, and he can't be expected to know how things operate in D.C. That's why the folks sent him there in the first place.
Right. I think the first thing is, well, first of all, the president is new at this is, it doesn't hold a lot of water just because he campaigned on the fact that he was savvier than everyone else. He knew how to make deals. He knew how the world works. And the fact is, obstruction of justice and that kind of conduct is just as illegal in New York real estate as it is in, in Washington and in the White House or what have you. So I don't know if that's going to fly. I think if you looked at Speaker Ryan actually said that yesterday. If you look at his subsequent statements, he kind of backed off that a little bit. It's unclear, whether that will be a significant line of offense going forward or defense going forward. As far as what was the first part of the question?
Former FBI Director Comey leaked that memo to his friend, and I'm not a lawyer, so I don't. But some people have said, look, it's the writings of his memos. They weren't classified. He's a private citizen, but Correct. I've seen others saying like that could be a problem.
Yeah, look, I'm a journalist. I think leaks are not always bad. I think leaks are good. Leaks are the friend of information and of transparency. Now, if it's classified, that's a completely different part of the conversation, and it's very problematic in many cases. But from what I can tell, these were not classified conversations. And also, look, I think the president tweeted about them first. The president, in his remarks, he was the first to sort of reveal what was said or what his version of events were in this. So, does that waive any kind of privilege that the president or his lawyers might be talking about? It's unclear, but I don't. I mean, I guess what they're arguing is that everyone would be better served if there was no version of events from this meeting, if this all went on in private and the FBI director, out of loyalty or self-preservation or whatever, decided to keep completely quiet about it despite his concerns. I mean, I'm not sure if that's an argument or not, or if that's what they're going to pursue, but that seems to be what they're saying.
You know, going back to that question of integrity, Mark, a lot of people are struggling to understand how someone like the former FBI director, who has been in Washington for a long time, he's had a very long life in public service, would not, once he heard, or once the president approached him in a way that he felt was perhaps not the proper way for a president of the United States to approach an FBI director, why he didn't go to other folks beyond the Attorney General. Even Senator Dianne Feinstein, a Democrat, was sort of perplexed by that during that testimony yesterday. And it seems to me that he does sort of have to answer to that more than just saying, I felt shell-shocked.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I think he was pretty frank about it yesterday. I mean, he seemed to have some regret about it. But at the same time, look, when the President of the United States expresses a pretty firm hope, if that's, it's the word he used, supposedly, after clearing the room, I mean, it's a little bit hard. I mean, it doesn't sound like he didn't push back. It sounds like he just sort of remained pretty reticent and quiet and stoic. But yeah, I mean, maybe in retrospect he could have done something differently. But at the same time, I mean, look, a lot of the Republicans who are saying this are not exactly people who are standing up to President Trump either, whether publicly or privately. So, when you're the president and you have someone in the Oval Office, as a lot of presidents have said, you have quite a home court advantage. And, what you says has weight, and it doesn't matter who the president is. So, yeah, I mean, maybe he could have pushed back a little bit, although it's sort of unclear, and it sounds like, certainly his discomfort is material here.
Let's talk about that memo again. After that tweet from the president about possible tapes of their conversations, it sounded like an implicit threat. And yesterday, Deputy Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders said that she has no idea whether there is a recording system in the Oval Office, although it's been reported that the president, when he was a private citizen working in real estate, liked to record people on his mobile device. So how do you expect the administration, A, to handle these questions moving forward? And if it does turn out, would we ever know if the president actually recorded a conversation on his phone but then deleted it?
Well, I mean, I would hope so. I mean, I think, look, this is not a terribly complicated question. I mean, it's fairly black or white. Either the tapes exist or they don't. And if they exist, it'd be nice to know what they said. But the problem is this. I mean, look, I actually was at Speaker Ryan's news conference yesterday on the Hill, and I just sort of asked him, look, you've been in the Oval Office many, many times. I mean, with President Trump, do you have a sense that you're being taped? And he said, I have no idea. This is a question that I think a lot of people are going to get, first of all. It becomes more of a distraction. But it's a question that, look, they're going to have to answer one way or the other, because the I don't knows, I have no idea, we're not going to talk about it any further, is only going to invite more. And it's not like this is an inconsequential question at this point. I mean, this is the thing that would settle this matter once and for all, and we could all hear the tapes and we would know what went on.
Mark, before I let you go, I'm curious, given that you were in that press conference with Speaker Ryan yesterday and you're clearly talking to lawmakers, there is their public face, how they feel when they're talking on camera, and then there's how they really feel. And I thought it was interesting that Bill Kristol, the conservative columnist, put out a tweet, said, I happen to have seen various GOP senators this afternoon. Trust me, basically, they're not just concerned, they're pretty terrified. What do you make of that?
I saw that tweet. I also, Jake Sherman and Anna Palmer in Politico in their morning playbook had an allusion to this also. I mean, the fact is, there's always been a gap between what Republicans on the Hill and what elected Republicans across the country have said about President Trump and what they say privately. And I think that gap is getting bigger. I certainly found that yesterday. It's becoming, I think, increasingly a more difficult needle to thread here. And I think eventually, I think especially as you get closer to election time and maybe as the president's numbers move more south, you might hear more public candor as opposed to private candor. But I can definitely attest to the fact that the private candor is getting a lot more concerning, a lot more tough, and frankly losing a lot of patience with just how much time this is wasting and how much time it's really getting in the way of getting the Republican agenda through.
Mark Leibovich of the New York Times Magazine. Mark, thank you as always.
Thanks, Vlad.